All right, we're doing 5-7 slope-intercept form, and want to start out by just kind of writing the equations. We have y equals mx plus b. And as we have that, the equation is slope-intercept. When we've been talking about slope as though slope is this letter right here. So m is going to be the slope. And intercept, we've been talking about x-intercepts and y-intercepts. Well, this time here, it's going to be our b value is going to be the y-intercept. And by that, what I'm really trying to say is that's going to be the y value when x is 0. So as we go through and do a graph either like this, or suppose it could be quadrant 1, b is going to be the number where that line crosses the y-axis. So it'll look something like that. So if we go to this one here down below, we now know that the slope then is going to be a 2. The y-intercept is going to be a 4. And we could, I'm going to get to the graphing stuff later on in the notes, but if we're talking about like a data table, we then would know that, well, when x is 0, y is going to be 4. And I don't want that to be like a mystery, so I want to kind of point out why, that if you take this x value of 0, if you put it in there, 2 times 0, any slope, any number times 0 is 0. So when x is 0, then you just end up with y being 4. So we could go through then in our data table and put in like a 1 and a 2 and a 3. And you could go and actually put 1 in the equation, put 2 in the equation, solve for these different y values. But you could also say, well, if x is going up by 1 each time, I know because the slope is 2, my y value is just going to increase by 2 every time x goes up by 1. So that is something you could do as a shortcut. So getting down to writing equations, we're going to get two types of problems there, and both of them will fit with this y equals mx plus b thing. One type like this first one, we're just going to give you, like, here's the slope, here's the y-intercept, slap them in there. And then you can do that. So y then equals, you can put the x in, we just need to fill in m and b. So alright, y-intercept is 3. So that's going to go in for b, so I have plus 3 instead of plus b. Slope of 1/2, well, slope was the number that x is multiplied by. So y equals 1/2 x plus 3. This next thing, the y-intercept, b is what I put in the blank. Y-intercept is the letter b. But books so often talk about it being the initial condition. Looks like I can't talk and spell initial at the same time, sorry. Often makes more sense to people if you just say it's the starting amount. So that's going to be how much do you have when x is 0? What's the y when x is 0? So that's going to fit nicely for a story problem, something like this. So we have y equals mx plus b. You have 326 songs on your iPod. You buy 3 more every week. Write an equation showing the number of songs on your iPod in x weeks. So we have y, we have x. So you really just need to figure out 326 and 3. Which one's the slope, which one's the y-intercept? Well, if you start with 326 songs, that's going to be the b value over here. If you buy 3 more a week, every time x goes up 1 more week goes by, you have 3 more. So you get y equals 3x plus 326. All right, so now we're on page 2, and we're looking at graphing these things. This is where you're going to find you save just a ton of time. It's awesome. So first step, I want to say put a dot. So step 1, put a dot on the y-intercept. And as I write the steps, I'm just going to go through and do that for this first example here. So put a dot on the y-intercept. Well, we have y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4. So the positive 4 is going to be my y-intercept. So I'm going to take and put a dot there. So up 4. And now you need to have at least 2 dots to make a line. I'm going to go through and find more than that with step 2. Use slope to find points. And I'd encourage you as you do it to use the slope to find a bunch of different points that kind of go across that whole graph, kind of the range of the graph. So when we look at this thing here, our slope is going to be negative 2/3. And if you go back to slope is rise over run, it gets to be a whole lot easier. So the rise is going to be a negative 2, the run is 3. So if I start at my point there, I have a rise of negative 2, so I go down 2, and then a run of 3. Since it's positive 3, I go 3 to the right, so I want to put a dot right there. And we can just kind of repeat that procedure a few times. So if I go down 2 more, then 3 more over to the side. Now if I try it again, I'm going to be off the graph somewhere, and it's kind of like bad form to try to put dots off the graph or make grid lines that extend past it. But I could take that same thing and do it backwards. Negative 2 over 3 is the same as 2 over negative 3. It's not really proper to have a negative in the denominator. But I could look at it as though I have a rise of positive 2, so I go up 2, a run of negative 3, so I go 3 to the left. So I'm going to do that to find one more point. So up 2, 3 to the left, so my last point is going to be right there. I put a dot there. Then pick your favorite straight edge. I have a pack of post-it notes here that I'm going to use. Could be a ruler, could be the side of a calculator, side of an ID, kind of whatever you might have. Do a straight line through there. Put an arrow on both ends, and that is step 3. So draw a straight line through the points. And make sure you get the arrows on both ends too. Now it is possible I have a couple curveballs. I tried coming up with what would be some curveballs people throw at you in this last example. And let's do it together, shall we? So first step, put a dot on the y-intercept. So people see this 5 right here for the y-intercept, but sometimes they miss that it's a negative 5. Because the format is y equals mx plus b, you could view this as though it's plus a negative 5. So my y-intercept has to be down 5. So when you have your graph, should be a dot right about there. Another curveball that gets some people is the slope there is 3. And if slope is rise over run, sometimes people get stuck with like, well, I don't have a fraction, what do I do? But you could take 3 and turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. You could take any number divided by 1 to get the fraction. And so as I go through and do this one now, my slope is going to be a rise of 3, so up 3, and a run of positive 1, 1 to the right. So I'm going to put a dot there, go up 3 more, put a dot there, up 3 more, put a dot there. So as I go through and get my dots put in then, and there's not room to go down 3 and left 1, so I'm going to leave that one off. Then grab your straight edge and put a nice line through the dots that go to the end of the graph. Put an arrow on the top, and you are done. So that's it for the section. Let me know if you have questions. Be glad to help.